We kicked off this series last week, and you'll be glad you did. If you missed that, you can catch up on our YouTube channel or at fbcnext.com. You can watch the video back from the last message last week. But I want to tell you something that is true of me that I think might be true of you also, and that is I do not like to be told what to do. I don't like to be told the things that I should do or the things that I have to do. Something within me resists when I'm told those things. Now, I love to play golf. It's one of my favourite pastimes. It's something that brings me joy, and it's a great release for me. And when I play golf, I like to hit the ball as hard as I possibly can. That's probably why it's very cathartic and therapeutic to me. I can build up all the tension in my backswing and just release it through that golf ball. Because my theory is, if I can swing the club face, the club, as fast as possible, then I can send this little tiny white ball as far down the fairway as possible. And it's saying that logic, it's saying the faster you swing the club, the further the ball is going to go. If everything in your golf swing is on plan and it is running smoothly as it is. The problem is that when you swing in golf really quickly and your golf swing isn't perfect, and apparently my golf swing isn't perfect, what tends to happen is instead of pushing the ball that way, you push the ball that way, or you push the ball that way. So the increased speed just results in tragedy. Instead of the ball flying down and landing in the fairway, it ends up landing in the trees. And I have a friend who I play golf with a lot, and he likes to give me advice. And that's against golf etiquette. I'm not supposed to give people advice. If I'm honest, I do the same thing as well, largely because I want to put people off their game. But one of the advice that he likes to give me is slow down. You know, he's thinking, just swing slower, and then you stand more chance of putting the ball on the fairway rather than in someone's garden or through the clubhouse window, as I have done once. That was quite embarrassing. But anyway, and yeah, just swing slower. And the problem is, he's correct. Don't tell him, but he's correct in that. But so I do that. I want to hit it as fast as possible, and I slice off into the trees, and then he'll say, slow down. And I know that he's correct. So on the next tee, I'm lining up and I'm thinking, and he's like, slow down. And what goes through my mind? I do not want to slow down. I want to rip the cover of this golf ball. I want to see streaks of fire come out the back of the ball. So I wind up as hard as I can, and I swing as fast as I possibly can, and I miss-hit the ball, and it just goes a few meters. And there he's standing with his arms crossed with that smug look on his face like, I told you so. And it's so infuriating because I know that he's correct. I don't like to be told what to do. Does that sound familiar? Is this just me, or do you have the same problem as well? What about instructions? What are you like with instructions? Put your hands up if you're the type of person who reads all the instructions from cover to cover before you start something. There's a few people here. We've got a team of people who are available to chat with you and pray with you and help you. I mean, who's like me that the instructions are the cheat code? That they're there in case you actually need them, and if you need them, you failed. Because they're telling you what to do. You know, I'm not, especially when it comes to building furniture, and those IKEA, flat pack things, they give you a little Allen key to build it with, and those instructions are ridiculous anyway. I don't need that. I can carry on and build the furniture. There's been many times when I've not really followed the instructions properly, and I regret that because I've gone through the process and I've realised that I put a panel on the wrong way around, and often I've gone too far. I can't undo everything. So we've got a few bits of furniture in our house that the panel is the wrong way around, and instead of the nice veneer, the chipboard, the stuff that they put over it, you can see the actual chipboard on it, because I can't go back and do it. All because I didn't listen to the instructions, and it's something that, well, to be honest, I don't mind, but my wife really, she minds, and she votes me on moans at me for it, so I regret that. You know, we're talking about this series called You'll Be Glad You Did, and it's part 2, it's timeless advice for troubled times. And last week we looked at a really important piece of advice, piece of wisdom, that life is connected. The decisions we make here has an impact on the things that happen over there. Life is connected. Today, I wanted to look at one piece of timeless advice, one piece of wisdom that will help us. And if we do this one thing, actually, we make this choice over here, we'll be glad we did over there. And it's really simple to remember because it's just one word. It's this. Listen. Just simply listen. Have you noticed how there's some things that are easier to listen to than others? You know, would you like another piece of cake? Oh, okay, let's go on. You know, I can listen to that really, really easy. I could be across the other side of a crowded room and someone says, would you like another piece of cake? And I hear that and I respond to that really well. There's other things that people can say that I struggle to hear, I struggle to listen to. You know, there might be some advice or something that's happening. What we want to do is we want people to say things that confirms our point of view. We want people to say things that agree with what we want or what we like or what we think. And often we end up listening to something that grates against us, that disagrees with what we think is correct. Perhaps you're at work and you're venting to a colleague about something that a co-worker has done or something that a co-worker has said and it's bugged you and it's irritated you and you're venting, you're offloading to that person. You know what? There's a place for that. Sometimes it's important to be able to vent to the right people at the right place at the right time. But what happens when your friend paints another picture of you? What happens when your friend suggests something that helps you see that maybe there's more to the situation, maybe there's more to the picture, and you think to yourself, yeah, maybe there is something else going on. Maybe they're responding or they're acting that way because of this is happening, and they help you see something from a different perspective. You know, when things like that happen, you end up saying something like, oh, thank you so much for your helpful insight. I can see that there's more to the story, and I will be more patient in the future. That's what we say, isn't it? No, that's not what we say. This is perhaps what we should say, but what we end up saying or what we end up thinking is more along the lines of, oh, you know, I don't want to listen to what you have to say because you're not confirming my point of view. You're not confirming my opinion. You know, sometimes we want people to tell us what we want to hear rather than what we need to hear. Here's some advice and some wisdom for you. Refusing to listen to what we need to hear is a gateway decision. Refusing to listen to what we need to hear is a gateway decision. What I mean by that is that when we refuse to listen to what we need to hear, you know, that's not the problem in itself, but it leads to something. Your greatest regret isn't because you refuse to listen to something that you should have listened to. Your greatest regret is because you refused to listen to something, you then acted on something, you did or you said something that you shouldn't have done, or you didn't do those things. So when we refuse to listen, that's the start of the problem that leads to something that we later regret, that we look back on and we think, oh, why did I do that? You know, this isn't the worst decision you make, but it leads to the worst decision that you will make. You know, they say our ears and our nose and our throat is connected, but did you know that your ears and your eyes are connected? What you hear impacts what you see. What you hear impacts what you see. When you refuse to listen to those things that you need to hear, but perhaps don't want to hear, it impacts what you're able to see. You go into situations blind. When you refuse to listen to the advice or the counsel of other people, you walk into situations without seeing the full picture, without able to see as clearly as you could. You do things blindly, you act in a way without being able to see properly. But everybody else around you can see clearly. They can see what you're doing, and they can see that you're making big mistakes and that you're going to regret it in the end, because they can see those things. But for whatever reason, because you're not listening or you're choosing not to hear those things, you can't see what everybody else sees. Let me introduce you to a thing called the Johari window. It sounds really exotic, but it's called the Johari window. We talked about this before, you see, because it was invented by two psychologists called Joe and Harry, and they came up with the name Johari window. I mean, I suppose there's worse ways to come up with the name. And the Johari window is all about this sort of stuff, about the things that we see and the things that we don't see and the things that other people say. So this top window here, square one, this is what's called the open area. And this is the stuff that you know about yourself, and it's also the stuff that other people know about you, the things that are obvious, you know, so that people can look at you or they just know about you. Over here, this is the hidden area. So this is stuff that you know about your stuff, about your life, but things that you keep hidden from other people. People from this side can't see that, but you can see that. Down here is a window which is called the blind area. That's the stuff that other people know about you, but that you don't know about you. This is amazing. This stuff is so obvious to us. When people look at you or listen to you or think about you, this is so obvious to them. But for some reason, you just don't see it. You're just completely unaware. You're not able to see what it is that other people see. And then in this area is the unknown area. That's the things that you don't know about yourself, and there's the thing that other people don't know about yourself. This is the square that only God knows about us. And so the psychologists Joe and Harry have used this to describe something that is true, that exists. And the whole point of the Johari window is that we want to make this square to be as big as possible. We want to have as big an open area and smaller other areas in life. Because when we have a bigger open area, well, people tend to trust us more because they know who we are and they know that we're not hiding things from them. Our relationships are better. We're more secure in ourselves because we know who we are and we're aware of those things that we don't know about ourselves. So our goal is to increase this open area to be as big as possible. So how do we do that? Well, firstly, we increase the open area into the hidden area simply by being willing to tell people stuff about ourselves, by letting our guard down, by being vulnerable, by being willing to share. Now, we don't do that with everybody. We don't suggest, you just go and stand on the corner of the street and just shout out things about yourself that other people don't know. But I do suggest you have a group of people who know you and who you can let in, who you can let your guard down and be real with. We talk about intentional community all the time here at FBC. Spiritual growth happens best in the context of community. You can't grow spiritually unless you're connected relationally. That's why we run small groups and put so much time and emphasis into them, because it creates an opportunity for us to invest in the lives of other people and other people to invest in our lives. To have a group of people who we can let know us, who we can let in, who we can be open with and vulnerable with and transparent with. So we let people know this by disclosing, by sharing stuff about ourselves that we might want to keep hidden. And we grow the open area into the blind area simply by listening to what other people have to say. And often we have to ask. Often you have to give permission to people to let you know those things. And largely the reason you have to do that is because they don't know that you don't know this. It's so obvious to them. They're completely aware that you can't see this. A phrase that we use a lot with the team at FBC is we encourage people to ask people in their team, what's it like to be on the other side of me? That's a dangerous question to ask. I encourage you to do that. Ask somebody that you know and you trust. Maybe if you work in a team environment, what's it like to be on the other side of me? And what that will do is it will really increase the relationships that you have with other people, giving them the opportunity to speak into your life and share those things that you weren't aware. And as you do that, you grow into that area. But what happens when we reveal stuff to other people about ourselves, and when we listen to things that other people have to say about us, actually we grow into this unknown area, that we discover things about ourselves that we didn't know were true, or that other people didn't know were true. And that's the whole thing that Joe and Harry have come up with here. But I think there's more to this. I think we can add an extra element into this, because the thing that I want to do is I want to bring God into the equation here. I want to seek God and ask God, what is it that you see about me? What is it that you know about me that I don't know, or perhaps other people don't know? And when we bring God into this whole equation, actually he reveals what's in this box. But the way he does that is by encouraging us to actually reveal this box to other people and discover what's in this box from asking other people. And when we do that, and actually in a prayerful state, when we do that with God at the heart of that, we discover more and more about ourselves in them. Now, the whole reason I'm talking about this is because this has a massive impact on what we're talking about this morning. Joe and Harry didn't invent this, or they came up with the model, but the wisdom behind it is something that's been true since human beings have walked on the planet. And it leans itself, or it builds upon wisdom that's been there for generations. Let me tell you a little bit about King Solomon. Okay? Solomon, this is his Facebook profile picture. I've just got that online. You can follow him on Facebook. It's not on Instagram. It's not really going for that just yet. TikTok, don't follow him on TikTok. Facebook is fine. And King Solomon was the son of David. David was the boy, as a boy, he killed the giant Goliath, and he grew up to be the greatest king that Israel had ever had. When David died, the throne passed on to Solomon. Solomon became king of Israel. And Israel was a force to be reckoned with at this time. It was a mighty nation. Through David, Israel increased and expanded its borders. They were a mighty military force because David was a mighty warrior. And Solomon inherits this. He becomes king of Israel. And we think he became king of Israel when he was about 20 years old. Now, imagine that you became king when you were 20. If you're over 20, think back to what you were like when you were 20 years old. And imagine that you've just become king of this, or queen of this great and powerful nation. That you have become one of the most powerful people on the planet. You're the most powerful person in your nation. You're one of the most powerful people on the planet, and you're 20 years old. How would you go about it? How would you go about setting up and establishing your reign? How would you go about leading that kingdom and having that impact on the rest of the world? Let's take that up a notch. This is what happened with Solomon. So he's 20 years old. He's just inherited or received all of this power, more power than he could possibly know what to do with. And then God turns up and he asks him, or he presents this request to him. God says, the Lord appeared to Solomon during a dream. God said, ask for whatever you want me to give you. Now, put yourself in Solomon's shoes. You're back in your 20s. You just become the most powerful person in your nation, one of the most powerful people in the world. And now God is coming to you and saying, ask me whatever it is that you want. How do you respond to that? What do you say? What is it that you ask for? This is how Solomon responds. He says, now, Lord my God, you've made your servant king in place of my father David. But I'm only a little child, and I do not know how to carry out my duties. Solomon comes before God and he acknowledges that the reason he's king is not because of himself, it's because of who God is and what God has done. And then he says something that I'm pretty sure I didn't say a lot when I was in my early 20s. He says, I don't know how to do this. When I was in my early 20s, I knew how to do everything. There wasn't much that I didn't know how to do, because obviously, there's that sense of youthful arrogance that gives you the confidence just to go about life. And there's a place for that, and that's important. But Solomon has a different attitude. He has a different posture. Coming before God and acknowledging that he's king, not because of himself, but because of what God has done, is putting him in the right place and actually referring to that I'm only a little child. How many 20-year-olds would say that? Now I'm an adult now. I know what I'm doing. I'm independent. I'm capable. I'm only a little child, and I don't know how to carry out my duties. Solomon hasn't answered the question that God has asked him. God said, what is it you want me to do? Ask me whatever it is that you want from me. And Solomon's not even answered it, but he's putting himself in a place where he can answer this. He's adopting a posture that's right before God and right before other people. And this posture is so important in our world, and it's so important in Solomon's life. And it's a posture, it's a commodity that is actually quite rare. It's the commodity or the posture of humility. That Solomon is actually willing, or he actively embraces this posture of humility before God and before other people. Many years later, Paul, the guy who wrote lots of the letters in the New Testament, talked about humility in one of his letters to the church in Rome, and he describes humility as something like this: don't think more highly of yourself than you ought. That's what he says to the people who are listening to his words. Don't think more highly of yourself than you ought. That's what humility is, and that's exactly what Solomon has embraced. That's the posture that he has. He's the most powerful person in his country. He's one of the most powerful people on the planet. God is saying, what is it you want me to do for you? And he responds, and we'll look at how he responds, out of this place of humility, out of this posture of recognizing or not thinking too highly of himself. And because of this humility, he's able to respond to God's request with real wisdom. This is what he says. So give yourself a discerning heart to govern your people and to distinguish between right and wrong. For who is able to govern this great people of yours? You know, God comes before Solomon and says, what is it you want me to do? Ask me whatever it is you want me to do. And this is what Solomon says. Now, imagine God has said that to you. You're in your 20s, and he's come even now in whatever age you are, and he says, ask me for whatever it is that you want me to do. How far down your list is something like this? Now, how many other things do you have to get through before you say, okay, and give me discernment, the ability to distinguish between right and wrong? You know, this is so unheard of, it's so unexpected, but it's something that Solomon has. And God is well pleased with Solomon's response. God says, I'll do what you've asked. I will give you a wise and discerning heart, so that there will never have been anyone like you, nor will there ever be. Solomon is famed for his wisdom. People from all the other nations came to him because of his wisdom, because of his discernment that God had given to him. And God has said, I'll do anything you want. Ask me for anything. And Solomon doesn't ask for more power. He doesn't ask to be comfortable. He doesn't ask for more fame or for more riches. He simply asks for this ability to be wise, to be able to discern. But what does that word, what does discernment mean? Well, discernment is the ability to see and understand clearly. The ability to see and understand clearly. That's what Solomon wanted. It comes with sound judgment. It comes with the ability to make wise decisions. And so God said, Solomon, what is it you want me to do for you? Ask me, and I'll do it for you. And Solomon says, Lord, I'd like the ability to see clearly. I'd like the ability to understand clearly. I'd like wisdom. I'd like that ability to discern. And God says, great, I'll do that for you. But how? How did God give Solomon the gift of discernment? Did he zap him and say, there you go, you'll reach level 10 in discernment, and he just pours that upon him? Or does he give him discernment and wisdom through opportunities to discern and to be wise with other people? Does God just pour a bucket over his head and make him wise? Or does God give him the opportunity to grow in his wisdom through conversations and interaction with other people? I think the simple answer to that question is yes. I think God did both. Solomon's already got buckets of discernment in order to answer the question that God says to him, what is it that you want me to give you? In this way, the posture of humility is given him this ability. And I think God gives him more and more discernment. But I also, and we see this in Solomon's life, God gives him wisdom, God gives him discernment, not just by pouring it over his head, but actually giving him people where he's able to grow in that wisdom and to grow in that discernment. You might have seen the film Evan Almighty. It's the thing about this guy who God sort of says, well, I want you to be a bit like Noah. It's a great, it's Evan, whatever it is. It's Evan Almighty. I'm getting confused. One of those films, and he basically prays for wisdom, and there's God, Morgan Freeman playing the character of God, and he's talking about, when you ask God for more patience, does he make you more patient, or does he give you the opportunity to grow in patience? And of course, if you pray for patience, God's not just going to go, ding, there you go, you're more patient. The way that God makes us more patient is by giving us opportunities to exercise that patience. So that to the extent it's true with discernment and wisdom. If you want the gift of wisdom, which is the gift from God, we ask God for it and he gives it to us. But I think the key way in which God gives us wisdom and discernment is through opportunities to exercise it, to be wiser and to discern. And so, Solomon was famed for his wisdom. As I said, people flocked to come and see him, to sit in his teaching, to ask his advice, to seek his wise counsel. And Solomon wrote one of the books in the Old Testament called Proverbs, which is a whole bunch of wise sayings, a whole load of wisdom in the book of Proverbs. And he sort of shares some of his wisdom with the rest of the world. He shares it with us. And right in the opening chapter of this book of Proverbs, Solomon says this: let the wise listen and add to their learning, and let the discerning acquire wise counsel. Let the wise listen and add to their learning, and let the discerning acquire wise counsel. Solomon is the wisest person on the planet, we think. And here he is, in all of his wisdom, surely because of his wisdom, he doesn't need to listen to anybody else. Surely because of his wisdom, he doesn't need external input. He doesn't need to listen or seek wise counsel. Surely he knows everything there is to know. No. Because of his great wisdom, he recognizes his need for other people. Wisdom isn't the need to not listen to people. Wisdom is the recognition that we need that external advice, that we need to listen, that we need to acquire wise counsel. And Solomon is saying that if you're wise, increase in your wisdom by doing this. Just in the same way that if you're rich, you increase your rich. Rich people don't stop acquiring riches. Wise people don't stop acquiring wisdom. People, if you're fit and healthy, you don't stop becoming more and more fit and healthy. You just grow and grow and grow and grow in that. Solomon is wise and he's encouraging people to grow in their wisdom. And the way that you do that is by listening to other people, is by acquiring wise counsel. I love that word there, acquire. It's going out of your way to actively seek it, to actively find it, not just to be passive in that way to come to you. It's acquiring it, going out and finding it. And Solomon was willing to listen both to God but also to the people around him. And because of that, his wisdom grew and grew and grew. It's not rocket science when you think about it. If you want to be wise, listen to the people around you. Let's share some more advice that Solomon gives us. The way of fools seems right to them, but the wise listen to advice. The way of fools seems right to them, but the wise listen to advice. Wisdom kicks in when we're willing to listen to what we need to hear, but don't want to hear. Wisdom kicks in when we're willing to listen to those things that, I need to hear that, but I'm not sure I want to hear that. What you need to hear most is often what we want to hear the least. What we need to hear most is often what we want to hear the least. What wisdom does is not push back and go, I'm not listening to you in that situation. Wisdom leans in, and actually wisdom goes out of its way to say, tell me what I need to hear, but might not want to hear. How do you respond in those situations? When we do that, and actually actively do this, we increase that square one in the Johari window. We discover more about ourselves that we didn't know was there. We discover more in that unknown area that God speaks into ourselves. When we actively and willingly seek to hear those things that we want, that we need to hear, but that we might not want to hear. Again, a phrase that we use here a lot when in regard to feedback and seeking feedback. Because sometimes when people tell us what we need to hear but don't want to hear, it hurts. So the phrase we like to use is, ouch, that helps. Ouch, that helps. Because there's a recognition that, that might be painful and that might be great or something within me might resist that. But there's something that's helpful in that I needed to hear that and I'm better because of that. Let me give you one last piece of advice from Solomon on all of this. Listen to advice and accept discipline. Listen to advice and accept discipline. Now, what's going through your head right now as you think about that? Solomon's advice, and what I'm encouraging you to do through the words of Solomon, is to listen to advice and accept discipline. Who's throwing their hands in there and saying, bring on, I love a little bit of discipline. Again, if that's you, you need to talk and have a conversation. We don't like this. There's something within us resists this. Some of the things within us struggle against this. And you might be sitting there thinking to yourself, well, why on earth should I do that? Why should I listen to advice? Why should I accept discipline? Well, this is why. And at the end, you will be counted among the wise. This is the wisest person on the planet said, listen to advice and accept discipline. And at the end, you'll be counted among the wise. At the end, if you listen to advice and you accept discipline, at the end, I think you'll be glad you did. Because you discover those things that you need to hear, not just want to hear. You discover parts about you that you didn't realise was true. You understand what it's like to be on the other side of you. You see what other people see that you just don't see, and you are better because of it. You'll be wiser than you are now if you listen to the things that you need to hear and not just the things that you want to hear. Again, another phrase that I use with the team here often is, not all feedback is equal. And by that phrase, it is there's certain people that I choose to listen to more than others. There's certain people that I choose to actually, when they speak up, my ears are more attentive than other people. And it might be because of their track record, it might be because of their wisdom, it might be because of their experience, it might be that often it's because I know that whatever it is that they have to say, that they want what's best for me, that they've got my back. And even when they say those things that I don't want to hear, but I need to hear, I know that actually ultimately is for my good. Not all feedback is equal. I think that's sound advice. But there's always a but, and it's a big but. The thing that we also say about this, not all feedback is equal, but we always want to try and see the truth in every piece of feedback that's given, irrespective of the intention or the heart behind it. More often than not, there's always a piece of truth, whether it's a big piece of truth or just a grain of truth in what is being said. And when people share things, whatever their intention or the motivation behind it, wisdom seeks to see what is the truth. Wisdom is able to actually pick through all of that other stuff and know, well, what do I do with that now? That's where discernment comes in. Okay, they've said this and they've offloaded to me about this, and maybe there's a whole bunch of stuff there that isn't helpful, and actually I don't need to hear it. It's more about them and where they're coming from. But what is the truth in there? God, what is it that you want me to hear from this? How does this grow me in that open area? Help us see those sort of things. Let me give you one piece of advice as we wrap up our time together. Don't discount what's being said because of who's saying it. We do this all the time. We discount this wisdom or this advice, all this discipline because of who said it. It's so common that it's actually got a name. It's called the genetic fallacy. We do it all the time. I'm not going to listen to them. Now, how can they say to me about how I should bring up my kids? Have you seen what their kids do? Have you seen how their kids respond or how they behave? We do this all the time. Don't discount what is being said because of who is saying it. Wisdom seeks to find that truth and to apply it to our lives. There's a grain of truth in everything, irrespective of the motivation, irrespective of the intention behind it, irrespective. And again, this is really where we need wisdom to know, how much of that do I take on and how much of that do I discard. But I believe God wants to and can speak to us through those things. Wise people are willing to listen to wise counsel. And here's the thing, think about this. If you just go through everything you've discovered via an imperfect person, if you just go through everything you've learned or discovered because it was given to you by an imperfect person, you would discount everything you've ever known, including your name. Absolutely everything we know is being given to us through imperfect people. So don't discount what is being said because of who is saying it. So our simple timeless advice for troubled times today is listen. What is it that you need to hear most but want to hear the least? Seek it. We're going to get the band back up and wrap up our time together. But I wonder what's going through your head at the moment. And this is an opportunity to nudge someone in the ribs and say, see, you need to listen to this. No, this is about us. What is it that you need to hear the most, but want to hear the least? How can you put yourself in a posture where you're able to allow people to speak into your life? Who are the people that you might need to actually go and seek and go and find and actually ask them some of those difficult questions that might be painful for you? What is it like to build a family? What is it that you see that I don't see? The good and perhaps the not so good. But also, how do you do that in a posture of humility, seeking God to speak into our? Because I want to know what it is that you want to say, but if I'm really honest, I want to know what God has to say more. And I recognise that God has often chosen to speak to me through imperfect people. So we need to listen to one another in order to hear the voice of God. But just get your head around that for a moment. That we need to listen to imperfect people in order to hear the voice of God. That the Almighty Creator wants to speak into your life. The Almighty Creator wants to show you things about yourself that you don't know. He wants to reveal more and more of who you are and graciously bless you and help you grow into those things. As you stand before God in a posture of humility, and as we sing this last song together, which is about a God who's spoken throughout generations, I believe He still wants to speak to us today? Have you got that posture where you're able to receive from him, to listen to him and to hear what it is that he has to say to you? Why don't we stand to our feet? Let me pray for us and let's sing this song together. Father God, I thank you that you have good things in store for us. I thank you that you want us to be wise. And I thank you that you've given us one another to help us achieve that. So Lord, will you help us listen? Will you help us hear what it is that you have to say to our lives? Will you help us hear those words that you want to speak over us? And Lord, will you help us hear those things that we need to hear, but don't want to hear? Give us courage. Give us security in who we are and who it is that you say we are. Help us to